what I think is compelling about this conversation too, especially given what's happening in the current election cycle, when this comes out, that will be over and decided. But the fact that we've gone back to, this is a unifying issue. This is not about either party. This is really just about being an American, and that's first and foremost the most important thing. And bringing that back around to how people reacted right after 9/11 versus talking about, well, is it this party or is it this party? Because at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter. I mean, these guys, didn't matter what party they voted for, they were sacrificing their lives.
No, we talked about this a little bit last night. Is what the American public needs to understand is, if you're downrange, you don't care who the commander-in-chief is. You don't care what party they represent. I mean, it's the furthest thing from your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're there to accomplish a mission and try your damnedest to make sure the guy next to you on both sides comes back home. And that's it. And, it's unfortunate that everything gets politicized. But, I mean, bottom line is, I think that is a good point. That is one thing that America can always unify around, is the guys that gave everything. Mm-hmm. And, it doesn't matter why we're there. It doesn't matter if you think we shouldn't be there. Guess what? We are there, and guys are not coming home, or they're coming home, in a flag-draped casket. Mm-hmm. And we just need to remember that, and remember their lives and their impact they had. Mm-hmm. And, it really, it should be so far away from politics, but of course, like everything, it gets lumped in.
Well, and to Dan's point too, I think it's a great kind of realization, when you talk about the veterans, and it's beyond what a veteran is. It is beyond just, the men and women that serve in the military. It's even, at the different agencies, like you were at the CIA, and, the stuff that goes on there, and the sacrifice that is made by the men and women that are going overseas into harm's way at all the different agencies, State Department, as we've seen recently in Libya. It's dangerous work, and it's really affected a lot of Americans, and there's a lot of Americans in the fight outside of the what we would come to know as a regular military.
I mean, 9/11 certainly shifted how the CIA conducted their paramilitary business, in addition to their counterterrorism tactics. I mean, I served in the counterterrorism center, and it was drastically different after 9/11. It was a given that you were going to go to a war zone, whether you were equipped or trained or not. You're serving as a civilian without the military training, but you're in the same situation as many of the military. So I do. I mean, especially the people that are still there, I give them lots of credit for doing that without thinking twice.
And a lot of times you don't hear about them at all until...
Which is intended.
Yeah.
And as it should be.
But I mean, we have CIA, we have our State Department diplomats, we have contractors, which vast majority of contractors are veterans who went and did their time in uniform and came back and basically continue to serve in a different capacity. So I mean, there's a lot of people stateside, and there's a lot of support people that don't get the fanfare that the special operators get, but no one can do their job without those support people and that structure of the military and the different services to really, I mean, if you're the tip of the spear, guess what? There's a lot behind you that is making that possible. So I think there's a lot of things we need to remember. There's so many people besides the military that are working overseas. I mean, we have different agencies, we have our diplomats and things like that. And then inside the military, the soft guys, the special operators, the cool guys get a lot of the media attention, but without the support people behind them, none of that would be possible. I mean, we have, every aspect and every function inside the military is hugely important to the mission. No, I mean, no matter what you do inside the military, you're helping the greater the mission, and you're helping the nation, and I think everyone that plays that part is essential and should be celebrated.
Back to the contractor piece, I want to touch on it. The security contractor is such a complicated thing and very misunderstood by I think a lot of Americans. They hear security contractor, they think mercenary. There's so much that these contractors do, from somebody installing electrical, plumbing, in these far outposts. I mean, so
Air conditioning.
yeah, I mean, these
Cooking your food.
yeah, I mean, it's just so there's a lot of good that is to associate with the contracting. Then you get into security contractors. I just want to touch on that because the media likes to always focus on the negative and sensationalize stuff. And we've seen recently this issue with, contractors, abusing drugs and alcohol overseas. I think ABC did that big story on that. And that's such a small segment and does not represent the contractors as a whole. And I just want people to know that. I mean, we've all been overseas and seen that does not represent the security contractor community at all. I mean, you're always going to have your bad apples in the bunch, but on a whole, it's just what these men and women are doing in support of our country and our freedom. Just it's incredible, and I just want to touch on that because it really bothered me when I saw that come out in the media, and it's like, all of a sudden people think that that's just the way everyone, it's complete shenanigans going on
Yeah.
overseas. It's just not the case.
Funny, we were at a bar the one night, and I was talking to my buddy about my last trip over to Baghdad, and a guy right next to him looked at me and said, "Well, thank you for your service." And I said, "Okay, great." And the way he phrased it, I actually said, "Well, I'm a contractor," and he looked at me and said, "Oh, well then," and walked away. And I was like, "But." It's frustrating because it's like we're still over there leaving our families behind. I did my time in the military. I'm just doing a different mission now. It's like, it is. I mean, these are still, veterans and patriots that are going over there and doing an essential mission to the big picture.
Yeah.
And, I agree. I think the American public is somewhat misinformed. That whole mercenary label is so far from what these guys are actually doing.
We are going to do a documentary. I talked to Jack about it, about security contractors. So hopefully next year we'll
Definitely
get cover stuff that I think pull the curtain back a bit and give people a look at what's really happening overseas.
So the one thing I would say, just in following up from my experience, I know what it's like to hear that news when you're not currently in. I was outside of the CIA by the time the Coast attack had happened, and it's very difficult to hear about that. When you're on the outside, I was making phone calls, trying to figure out who was involved. It's in some ways it's harder to not be there with everybody else, going through that. But
did you lose friends in that?
I did.
Yeah,
I did. There were a couple people who worked for me, and then I knew the chief of base. There was just. When I started out in CTC, there was still just a handful of women that were gravitating to the targeting officer position out of the analytical side, and Jennifer was kind of the lead in that, and I was segueing over shortly after the Iraq War, so I got to know her through. She was, definitely a substantive mentor of mine. She certainly knew the lay of the land when it came to counterterrorism field in the agency.
I think that, we talked about it a little bit earlier, like the survivor guilt thing is you always place it where the guy made it and his buddies didn't. And I think there's a large part of the community that has a lot of guilt, even though we weren't there, because we hung up our gun.
Yep.
We're not doing it anymore. So all of a sudden, when guys die, you have a bit of a sense of guilt. And, when guys I've lost that were active duty still, you get that feeling like, well, why didn't I stay in? Why did I hang it up? Maybe if I was there, and you try not to dwell on it, but I think there is definitely a feeling of guilt sometimes because, it's almost, you feel guilty for hanging it up. And it's like, everyone did their part, but at some point, whatever time is right in your life, you need to hang it up.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's family and stuff like that. But, there's just a odd.
And people ask me all the time, you're on such a great career track, You know, how could you get out of the Navy after over almost 14 years? And, you know, I can just show you pictures of my kids. I mean, I have no regret giving up, you know, a 20-year retirement to get out and spend time with my kids. I mean, I just spent a whole week with them last weekend and water skiing and yeah, I just look at them and they have zero regrets on getting out.
Well, thanks, guys. I think, you know, you certainly left an impression about who these people were today, and I think that was probably your whole goal, and I'm sure they would thank you for it.
Thank you for walking us through this, Nada.
Yep.